Hello, everyone. Welcome into Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. My name is Brandon Adams. This is Dog Nation's recruiting insider Jeff Sintel, and you can really tell that we are getting close to the start of the early signing period because after kind of a desert of information for months and months and months, now we're kind of closer to the deadline, closer to the time when guys are going to make their final official visits, some of those coming to Athens. You know, guys getting ready to sign on dotted lines, make big announcements. You can tell we are now getting close to the finish line. It hasn't all been good news for Georgia. We'll obviously cover that in great detail, but you can tell we are getting to that flurry of a finish as most of the programs not involved in conference championships are out on about making in-home visits and things like that. We have reached that busy time of year, Jeff, have we not?
Yeah, I guess we would, if for all you Marvel Comics or Avengers fans out there, this would kind of be the end game about to happen because I think that...
You know, end game was a phrase before the Marvel movie.
Maybe potentially. Maybe before Doctor Strange said so. I'm not quite certain.
Sure.
But for Doctor Strange fans out there, I guess Georgia's recruiting ebbs and flows have been a little strange of late. For a couple of fluctuations here, Georgia's number of public commitments is now down to 15.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're going to talk about on our show today, how these last couple of weeks before the flurry, before the early signing period, here's what we know. You know that Georgia's down to 15 public commitments. You know that the first day of the early signing period is December the 18th. The second day is December 19th. Georgia fans will be watching the second day of the early signing period as well because that's when Jordan Burge is set to make his announcement. Other things to think about here, because it's starting to feel that time of year, Brandon. You've got in-home visits happening.
Yeah.
Georgia made one of those on Sunday night to check out Canadian Theo Johnson. You're going to see Georgia make a lot of those after they get through with LSU prep week and the SEC championship game.
Okay.
But Georgia set for next weekend to host I would call a vital crop of potential Bulldogs on official visitors right before on the eve of the early signing period.
And we'll talk about who one of those guys at least is in a moment, but let me you mentioned a decommitment, let's kind of start with there. So Corey Wren made it be known on Tuesday that he was planning on opening up his recruitment, and admittedly, given what Georgia needs, Wren to me was always a bit of an odd fit because he goes to a high school that mostly runs the ball. He's played running back. He's not the biggest guy in the world necessarily, and you see on your screen there his announcement saying he's reopening his recruitment. However, during the tenure in which Wren was a UGA commit, I really kind of grew to like him. Every comment he ever gave you really made it sound like he was not just a physically tough guy, but kind of a mentally tough guy there as well. He embraced the challenge of coming to a place like Georgia and battling it out, competing for playing time, the work that a guy like Cortez Hankton would do to make him a better player. He just was kind of okay with all of that. I really like him a lot. I think that Wren is probably going to be a good college player somewhere, and admittedly, I think a better fit for him is probably a different school besides Georgia because Georgia needs receivers. So we'll say goodbye to Wren. And my gosh, man, I thought you brought some really interesting names up last night at DogNation.com. You know, the idea that Georgia's relationship with Arian Smith, who I believe is on that list of official visitors for next week, that's an exciting thing to think about. That's a name we've talked about a lot. Marcus Fleming, the former Miami commit who Georgia's had a chance to host, that's an exciting name. And you also wrote about the fact that Georgia is now maybe back involved, maybe always involved with, but back involved with a guy in Jermaine Burton who we like, at least I personally like a lot because of his relationship with Terrence Edwards, a guy that I have great respect for. The fact that I've seen some real athleticism from Burton, that's a guy that I like. So to think now, in the absence of Corey Wren, and you wish him well as he moves on, it's an Arian Smith, it's a Jermaine Burton, it's potentially a Marcus Fleming. Those are names you can get excited about. That's a fun conversation for Georgia fans to have about how receivers might populate some of the final spots for Georgia in its 2020 recruiting class.
So I think what it is now is the numbers at 15, and you wonder Georgia's now receiver room is only currently getting two imports or two new faces in Justin Robinson, 4-star, getting a lot better in his senior year, much better route runner, big physical player, going up, snatching balls. And then you got Marcus Rosemy, who's the number 6 overall receiver in the country. I believe he's the number 40 overall prospect. Here's what I see happening, Brandon. When you see this surge, and let's call it a surge late for wide receiver recruiting, I think it is enhanced by what Georgia has and has not had on the field for the 2019 season. We're talking about that seasoned receiver. Instead of like one or two George Pickens or Dominic Blaylocks, maybe 3 or 4 guys that can come right in and make plays in the SEC. Guys that look like Alabama has signed over the past couple of years, and Burton is one of those guys, not just because he can jump over swimming pools, but when you look at what Georgia's doing, there's always a cause and effect thing with recruiting. Georgia had always wanted to add one more burner to the class, but now you see Georgia. When you look at Wren's situation, he told me very delicately that he's not going to consider Georgia going further.
Yeah.
And then you add into the fact that I don't think there have been many, Brandon, if any, prospects ever decommit from John Curtis Christian in Louisiana. They value the commitment.
Yeah.
They value when you say your word, you're going there, you're going to go there. So I think that means when you start putting these things together with Marcus Fleming on an official visit, Jermaine Burton making a hush-hush visit over the last week during Georgia Tech prep to check out Athens. You also see names like Xavier Henderson. You see guys like Marcus Fleming. You see all these names coming together. Burton, Arian Smith, the burner. Remember Arian Smith? We spoke on this show last week that he had dropped his decision vectors and made his parameters Georgia, Florida, or Alabama. He'd eliminated Clemson. He'd eliminated Oklahoma. That track program still harkens. It still rings a strong bell there for Arian Smith. All of a sudden, a guy like Wren, who was fast but doesn't have a lot of great senior film making plays as a receiver, just punt returns and runs in the veer in that John Curtis offense. Maybe needs a little bit more projectability, not a refined, skilled receiver who can come in right away and make plays.
Yeah, he's a good player, and I think he'll be a good college player for someone. Georgia needs polished, trained receivers, which is what Wren isn't right now. And so this is going to probably work out better for both entities in the long run. And let me just say this. It's not a coincidence that the area in which Georgia has underperformed on the field this year is also the area in which in recent years Georgia has underperformed the most in recruiting. Now, the 2019 class for Georgia was a great haul with guys like Blaylock and George Pickens. But prior to that, Georgia did not swim in the deepest waters when it comes to recruiting wide receivers. It just didn't. I'm talking about even predating Kirby Smart. Georgia was not an elite wide receiver recruiting program. Some good receivers in the program through those years, but not consistently dominant when it comes to recruiting that position. I wouldn't call it consistently dominant recruiting receivers yet, but if it's a Blaylock, Pickens 1 year, guys like we're talking about right now to go along with already in the fold, like Marcus Rosemy and others in this 2020 class, then the complexion of Georgia's wide receiver recruitment really has changed at that point.
Yeah, I think James Coley's phrase was change the game. Well, yeah. I think Cortez Hankton's phrase and coaching the wide receivers for the University of Georgia could be change the room. And you talk about, look how Georgia's flipped rooms in a couple of years. Sam Pittman totally flipped the offensive line room in about 2 cycles. I think Georgia did that at inside linebacker and outside linebacker in the course of about 2 cycles. So what if Georgia can go? Remember that 10-year goal from 2009 Marlon Brown to 2019 George Pickens where they didn't sign a single top 5 receiver, a 5-star receiver? What if in 2 years Georgia's receiver room all of a sudden can be filled with not projects or not let's see how good he can be, but exclamation point type receivers? Let's rattle them off here. Pickens was a top 25 prospect. Yeah. Blaylock was a top 40 prospect. Rosemy's a top 40 prospect. Burton's a top 50 prospect. Smith is a top 75 prospect. All of a sudden, he can get a fellow choked up.
Jeff is choked up. That's how exciting all of this is.
All of a sudden, Georgia could get demonstratively better in terms of the playmaker, make yourself open, work yourself open, run routes, get separation category in the span of 2 cycles.
Chuck Pearson wants to hear the top 10. He says he can't wait to see that list today. So we'll show that off to him here in a moment. Before we get to that, though, let me kind of just change the gears for a moment and bring up another story. Georgia missed out on a guy on Friday that I certainly expected to get. That's the 4-star defensive lineman Zykevious Walker. He's going to go to Auburn. Not the first time that Georgia and Auburn will battle over a player, and there'll be plenty of these wins that Georgia gets in the future. Auburn did win this one. Where does Georgia go from here?
I think, well, the number's 15. That's how many public commitments they have. And if Georgia still wants to add guys like Keely Ringo, Darnell Washington, Jordan Birch, other names that we're going to drop in this top 10 list, I think Zykevious Walker becomes a piece that it just feels like to me he was never truly valued all along, prioritized. Was never a guy that was seen as somebody that can come in and play right away. And, quite honestly, Zacchaeus Walker went from an edge guy, a defensive end type guy, to more of a 3-tech, 5-tech guy when he put on about 15 pounds going into his senior year. And for me, I look at Zacchaeus Walker, small school, Georgia high school football, never really evaluated, vetted in the camp circuit, the All-American game circuit, the openings, the regionals, stuff like that. I always wondered, what he could be when you look at Georgia, who has certainly a deficiency on the defensive line coming in with you losing up to 5 guys off this year's class, 5 guys that will graduate or exhaust their eligibility. You talk about Tyler Clark, you talk about David Marshall, you talk about Mikhail Carter, you keep going on down and list Justin Young, Michael Barnett. You have a lot of guys, a lot of openings in the defensive line room. But then you look at Zacchaeus Walker, and I always wondered, where does he fit? Where does he play right away? You think about Bill Norton, who got some action against Georgia Tech. You think about Tymon Mitchell. You think about Zion Logue. You think about Trayvon Walker. You think about Tramel Walthor. Does he play right away? Is he head and shoulders above those guys? First of all, I think Brinson is the guy, the 2020 defensive line commitment out of IMG Academy. He's a guy that would play right away. You know about him. He's played at IMG. He's played at that great program that takes on the national comers. You know what Warren Brinson can do. You know what Jalen Carter can do out of Apopka, Florida. You didn't really see the same things yet out of Zacchaeus Walker to come in and play right away immediately in a spot like Georgia. And now you start thinking about scholarship allocation. Does Georgia need an extra defensive end in this class not named Jordan Burch as much as it needs 2 tight ends, as much as it needs now 2 more speed demon receivers, maybe 3 more speed demon receivers, as much as it needs an elite cornerback, as much as it needs another safety? Remember, folks, you've got Eli Wolf and Lawrence Cager's scholarships counting for the 2020 class. Georgia still has to sign a kicker, or at least blue-shirted kicker in this 2020 class. All of a sudden, the needs about taking a top 160 type prospect at defensive end, defensive tackle, that gets a little fuzzy for me.
Are you ready for a whole lot of savings? Well, that's what Kroger can provide for you. They've got you covered here for the 12 days of Mary. To opt in for this great opportunity of savings, the 12 days worth of Mary deals, text 12MARY to this number, 99894. Text 12MARY to 99894, and you can start receiving your savings here as part of Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. All right, with all that said, with now Zacchaeus Walker off the board, with receivers kind of maybe moving their way up, let's take a look at a newly minted version of our top targets here on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. Certainly new names near the top, new names throughout. I'm actually really curious, much like one of our commenters mentioned earlier, to kind of see how all of this plays out. So I want to get it cranked up and get it started, and let's find out who the new name, I shouldn't say new, it's the same guy that's been, 2020 5-star cornerback Keely Ringo. One of the things I had some fun with going back to the weekend is Ringo certainly seemed to enjoy Georgia's win against Georgia Tech, having a little fun with, I'm assuming, his friend on Twitter, Richard LeCount. Nice to see Ringo tweeting about the dogs if you're a UGA fan.
Yeah, you got a couple things there. We mentioned on the world-famous Dog Nation Daily program, number one, it's an affinity towards Georgia and its rivals and current players on the team that he's gotten to know. Those two together went slip and slide together. Remember?
Yeah.
At the July cookout, Kirby Smart got on the slip and slide, or the makeshift banana peel, if you will. Ringo also had some Georgia gloves in a recent playoff game. Reminder now, Georgia currently only has 1 defensive back committed for the 2020 class, and that is Jalen Kimber.
Yeah.
Does Georgia add 1, 2, 3 more? That's something to think about.
Let's see name number 2 here. It had been Noah Sewell for a long time. Sewell now on his way to Oregon. The number 2, though, the same as it was a week ago. It is Darnell Washington, 5-star tight end out of Las Vegas. And did I see this on Twitter correctly? Washington's got another official visit coming up somewhere. Is that right?
Got a couple. He's going to Miami this weekend.
Okay.
I'm going to get some South Beach going on this weekend, Brandon. And then, remember, on the heels of just checking out Georgia for its last home game against Texas A&M. And then after that, he has scheduled another official visit. This one, Brandon, would be to Tennessee.
Did see that on Twitter. So some chatter about that anyway.
You have a pair of official visits coming, and the thinking there is, how much longer will Darnell Washington take this out? Will he do it in mid-December? Will he do it during the early signing period? Will he sign something and then keep it on the hush-hush and then make his announcement what he has for the longest time said he was going to do on January the 2nd at the Under Armour All-American game. Those are all things Dog Nation will be watching.
Best thing I can tell, though, it certainly looks to me like Georgia has successfully made him a priority, made Washington feel like a priority. We talk about following the visits. I think unofficial visits are more telling than official visits, which sometimes can be simply paid vacations. The fact that Washington recently took an unofficial to Georgia for the A&M game, that for me was eye-opening.
Yeah, and then you think with Darnell Washington, he's a guy, I'm sure the same concerns are there with the relationship with Todd Hartley, as he wants to see Georgia do more with the tight end position, to prioritize the tight end more, to go up and, let's face it, when Darnell Washington gets on the field in college, whatever may come his way, he's going to be a matchup advantage at tight end because no one will be able to guard him, especially with his size and athleticism and ball skills and agility. It's going to be a tough assignment for anyone. And immediately, we talk about changing rooms. If Georgia's room, the tight end room, now includes a talent like Darnell Washington, he might even have to duck his head a little bit when he goes in through the threshold there. That's a good thing for Georgia's offense. Getting a lot more fun going further.
Next name, top targets class of 2020 here on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, Jordan Burch. And boy, the Burch situation is interesting. There is a lot of chatter about Burch online. Not generated by him, but man, rumors this time of year are going to take place whether the player themselves contributes to them or not.
Yeah, Burch has contributed zero to any of those rumors because he doesn't contribute anything in terms of a media setting or any sort of media content in terms of his decision. You look at Burch, and a lot of people are thinking, LSU is the new pretty lady in the high school, and that's the one that's really catching a lot of hot prospects' eyes. Ed Orgeron has a great reputation for recruiting defensive linemen, and he's taken an official visit to LSU, and I think by all intents and purposes, Brandon, my information, if it serves me well here, is he's basically going to look at LSU, South Carolina, and Georgia down the stretch. Mm-hmm. Georgia fans need to be very vigilant and look for Georgia to maybe have its best chance at Burch if he takes his official visit, which he is still saving, his official visit to Georgia next weekend.
Yeah, that's a big one. I love those December official visits. I think that's when Georgia really rolls out the red carpet the best, and getting a chance to make that pitch and that close right before the decision he's going to announce on December 19th, that really matters. Next name, top targets, class of 2020, Theo Johnson moving up the list. Interesting to see him climbing. Now, maybe that's on the basis of some other folks falling, but I thought it was interesting you dropped the nugget in that Georgia had a chance to go see him recently. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we still think of the Big Ten schools being a factor in all of this. Geographically, Michigan the closest, Penn State, maybe the one I've heard him speak the warmest about. So where are things now with young Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, so at the most, he's got 2 weeks, Brandon. He's told me that he does not want to take his recruitment out any further than December the 18th. That's the first day of the early signing period. Theo Johnson, I mean, Georgia folks can keep looking at this, and it would be a mouth-watering, drooling thought if Georgia could find a way to add a tight end like Washington and a tight end like Theo Johnson to its tight end room, especially considering the need for athleticism, the need for athletes, the need for explosiveness. Look at that one-handed catch right there. That's what you see out of Theo Johnson, the number one player in Canada. Again, folks, I always try to pepper our top targets discussion in here as well. Number one, I don't do predictions. I don't do crystal balls. I don't do usually by and large percentages unless Brandon gives me that really droopy face sometimes when he wants to hear about a guy. But with this, when we put this top targets together list every week, this is what we feel are the guys that Georgia needs, the ones that they have to add something to the program, the most coveted players, if you will, which also shows some mutual interest in the University of Georgia. That's why when you see Noah Sewell rated so high, that's when you see Jordan Burch go so high. We're doing something different, or basically the same with our top targets list this week, as you see everybody that I think is a priority or a growing priority to Georgia, and also a guy that would really help the program and really fill needs in the depth chart and all these, position grouping rooms right here. It's not a listing of the guys most likely and least likely to go to Georgia. It's never been that way. Just always want to make sure that when you guys go through these lists, you get the understanding what we're talking about here is the guys that Georgia needs to add. That's why it's called the top targets list in the class of 2020.
So this may surprise you a little bit, but when I think about all the guys that Georgia could miss on, one of the ones that fans might end up regretting the most, I think it'd actually be Theo. When you watch him play, He's a polished tight end. I said this before in talking about receivers. He's a guy that knows how to play the position. I see him putting up numbers, something that not all college tight ends do. I see him being a productive player where he goes. Obviously, I'd love for that to be Georgia. But of the guys that might wriggle away and end up somewhere else, that may be one of the ones you end up wishing you could have had if you're a Georgia fan.
So I've got a take on this, Brandon, and it's about the evolution and the Georgia offensive systems moving a little bit forward. You know, the SEC, folks, is a copycat league. They watch, they borrow, they take it. If something works, and if something's hard for Kirby Smart to defend in the next recruiting cycle or in the same recruiting cycle, he wants to go out and get one of those. I think seeing guys like Kyle Pitts and what he did for that Florida Gator offense, I think Theo Johnson can be a more athletic version, a bigger, stronger version of Kyle Pitts at the college level.
Boy, that's a big statement to make. Next name, top targets here. Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, big jump for Arian Smith, the wide receiver from the state of Florida, the speedy 4-star. What's new on him?
So he's a little bit bigger, a little bit more refined than Corey Wren, if we're going to make that comparison just once in this show today. Still got the 10.3, 10.4 speed in the 100 meters. True 4.3 speed. Wants to run track wherever he goes. Georgia has a national championship track program. Being recruited the most, his primary recruiter is Scott Fountain. Fountain's also responsible as the lead recruiter for Jalen Carter, who just continues to make incredible plays for the Blue Darters down there in Apopka, Florida.
Blue Darter is a good name.
It's a great name. But when you look at Smith, he's about 6'1", about 195. Now down to Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. You love hearing a battle with the Gators there, Brandon. The other thing to think about here, and I think that's the most interesting talking point we have here with Arian Smith, is he would have Mecole Hardman type speed. And that's something that the Georgia offense has been missing this year, especially with the absence of J.J. Holloman. But here's the thing. I'm curious. I want to call it curious to see whether he's going to be ready to make his decision by the time the early signing period rolls around.
Yeah.
Of course, the Georgias and the Alabamas and the Floridas of the world will encourage him to do so. But if he takes that out to February and keeps taking these visits and keeps checking out these schools, it'll be very interesting how this recruitment goes into February. As of now, if he makes his decision during the early signing period, Brandon, the fact that Georgia will host him next week, leading into that early signing period, that's got to be a good last at-bat run there for Arian Smith.
I was laughing a minute ago because when we started showing the Smith highlights, I thought I was off camera, and so I started rubbing my face and all the kind of stuff you do when you think no one's looking at you, and come to find out I was back on camera again, so I apologize. You'll have to see that. But what you want to see is the next name on our top targets list. Here and Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, and it's Dante Manning, you mentioned before, at least in terms of guys currently committed. Georgia only with the one defensive back right now, but that could eventually change when it comes to Manning.
Yeah, Manning is out of Missouri. The Show Me State is an area that is kind of Dan Lanning's, one of his recruiting territories, one of his recruiting sectors. I'm sure it's going to be of great importance to Georgia to be recruiting a Dante Manning with the defensive coordinator doing a lot of that recruiting. His last official visit, folks, is scheduled for this month before the early signing period. He's going to check out Georgia. He's been to Texas A&M. He's been to Oklahoma. That's the school he decommitted from. He's been to Oregon. He's been to Arizona State. Georgia will get the last one. He's an Under Armour All-American who will not enroll early, but Dante Manning will make his decision, as he's last stated publicly. He will make his decision at the Under Armour All-American.
And to be clear, this is not an either-or when it comes to Keely Ringo and Dante Manning. Georgia would like to have both.
I think that's the case. I think when you start looking at players, quite frankly, who can help Georgia, who can get on the field fast, I think Keely Ringo definitely can. I think Dante Manning definitely can. He has that track background.
And he's a cornerback as well, not a safety.
He is a corner. He's actually the number 2 corner in the country off the pure 24/7 sports rating. He's also the number 7 overall corner in the country on the 24/7 sports composite. Top 100 prospect. Yeah. DB, can do a lot of things, can play the star, can play a corner, can help out Georgia's scheme in a lot of ways. And in the SEC, basically you're in the nickel all the time anyway. So Georgia needs 5 premier athletes to go against the Clemsons, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, and the LSUs of the world.
Let's see the next name on our list. Top targets here for the class of 2020 presented by Kroger. It is Mikey Henderson, the Oklahoma commit. And going off the air when you were with us on Tuesday for Dog Nation Daily, you mentioned a little bit of a nugget about Henderson. Would you mind re-racking that here and giving some folks an update on what might be going down to the wire maybe with Georgia, Oklahoma when it comes to Henderson?
Yeah, so Henderson's interesting. There's probably a name on this list. If I had to think about it right now up to this second, it probably goes higher than Henderson's. But Henderson has told me this week that he's going to make his decision known on December the 18th. He has made his decision. He will wait until December the 18th. And he, who used to have some pause there, Brandon. I think I'm going to call it that. He used to have some pause about Norman, Oklahoma, the Sooners, how they plan to use him at H-back. He said he's had those discussions with Oklahoma now. Those details have been ironed out. And he said, we put this on the Dog Nation forum earlier today, he says he trusts the way that Oklahoma would plan to use him.
So he feels better about that now, something he did not always feel about.
Feels better about that right now. So Georgia, I know a lot of our talent speculators and insiders on the Dog Nation forum, or at least just huge consumers of Dog Nation recruiting content, they feel that it's a Darnell Washington tight end 1 or Darnell Washington, Theo Johnson 1A, 1B type thing there. Theo, then Darnell, then Theo. And then Mikey Henderson Jr. would probably be the best player available type, especially if Georgia doesn't get one of those two guys. First of all, look at this, guys. He's an athlete. He could be a fullback. He could be an H-back. A fullback in goal line sets for Georgia. Oklahoma wants to use him as an H-back, a flex in, a tight end. He is a red zone type weapon. Ability to go up and get the ball. Brandon, he runs a true 4.71 on the laser in the 40. He's about 6'2". He's about 235 pounds. He's almost power cleaning 400 pounds right now, Brandon. Wow. 375. He goes up, and he's shown the ability to go up and high point and go get a lot of balls in his senior film. Not exactly the tight end, dominant, huge size plus athlete Georgia's been looking for at tight end this year with guys like Rick Gilbert, with guys like Darnell Washington, guys like Theo Johnson. But he has a certain set of skills that the right coordinator could implement in the Georgia offense.
Sean Shannon, you mentioned Jalen Carter before. Sean Shannon on Facebook had some information on him, how he's performed during his senior year, says he's been unblockable. And if you're a Georgia fan, that's obviously something great to hear. Next name on our top targets here before the Hedges presented by Kroger. It is C.J. Stroud moving up. Interesting proceedings with the quarterback recruitment right now. What's new on Stroud?
So a lot of people noticed over the last weekend, Stroud did two things. One, he announced his official offer from the University of Georgia. The second thing he did is he decided he didn't need to go to Oregon and check out that school. Oregon's already got a 2020 quarterback signing in that class, and he just didn't see the need to go check that out. Stroud, according to all the information that's out there right now plans to make his decision during the early signing period and graduate early and be somewhere in January. I think Georgia has a chance here with C.J. Stroud. I don't think it has the best chance here, or I don't think it's an amazing chance there with C.J. Stroud, because I think Jake Fromm's the X factor.
So it's dependent on Fromm leaving.
I think Georgia's best chance at signing C.J. Stroud would be if Jake Fromm decided to take his considerable talents to the NFL.
Craig Stanfield's got a good question on YouTube. Craig, I'm going to get to that here coming up in just a moment. Let me finish the top targets and we'll get to your question because I do think it's a good one. Next name on our top targets list here on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. Coming in after the quarterback, new name for us on the list, former Ole Miss commit Eric Reed. Mentioned a safety before. Reed is one of those out of Shreveport, Louisiana. So we haven't talked a ton about Reed. We did talk about him on Dog Nation Daily this week. He is one of those guys that had a relationship with an SEC school, though, prior to kind of becoming available for Georgia. Seems like this relationship's moving pretty quickly.
I think the Ole Miss thing really is a big thing. The termination of Matt Luke has led to the dissolvement or the dissolution of his commitment to the Ole Miss Rebels, and now he opens things up really basically just after that. This is a prospect out of Louisiana, true safety. He's about 6'1", about 200 pounds, a guy with some speed, and he ranks as the nation's number 17 safety for this class. And here's the intriguing part. He was at Georgia for the Notre Dame game, Tried to keep that quiet, but we did see him out there in the bleachers prior to the Notre Dame game. And then he told me, matter-of-factly, that he has scheduled his official visit to Georgia for next weekend. So Georgia is going to get an official visit for Eric Reed. A lot of folks think that Georgia now is in a good position to eventually sign Eric Reed as a safety in the class of 2020.
All right, we'll see where that goes. How about our next name on our top targets list? Making the list. Boy, first time in a while we've seen a guy like this on our top targets list. Jermaine Burton. It lists his is at Calabasas, California, but he's currently LSU commit. He's also a guy originally from the state of Georgia. What was it, Marietta High School, I guess, for a little bit?
Hapeville charter to begin with.
Excuse me.
Played with Chris Smith, even knew Will Poole a little bit. That's a picture right there.
But wasn't he going to go to Marietta, though?
Okay, so this is tough. Freshman year, he's at Hapeville charter, picked up his Georgia offer, Florida, among others. Sophomore year, Jermaine Burton parachutes into IMG Academy and was named a starter on a team with a lot of college-bound juniors, college-bound seniors. He was an immediate starter basically at IMG Academy his sophomore year. His junior year, he transfers back home to the metro Atlanta area, and I believe spends at least a spring practice and even some of the summer with Marietta High School. Doesn't become eligible, decides to go to Calabasas, California, spends his junior and ultimately his senior years there at Calabasas, where there was some flirtation there that he was going to go back. I think it was even at IMG for about a week or so back in that program. So he's going back and forth, a lot of migration there from Jermaine Burton, but families his roots are in Georgia, his family's well connected in the Atlanta area. Georgia has always been a school that has been part of his eye, and now that late last visit shows there's something going on there where, truth be told, I think Jermaine Burton's is a name that Georgia fans are going to hear a little bit more about over the next coming weeks. And quite frankly, he's a guy that all of a sudden, really quick, when you see these moves being made by the Georgia staff in terms of prioritizing alpha, elite, polished receivers, I think Jermaine Burton is one of those guys that is the more intriguing late developments in the 2020 recruiting process.
Yeah, I don't mind telling you that. James Wade says he's an LSU lock. I wouldn't be so quick to assume that, James. What I will say is I like Burton a lot. If there was a way for him to end up in this 2020 class, it'd make me really happy. I've just always liked Burton as a player. And I know sometimes the evaluation can be tough when he's spent so much time at different high schools in Calabasas, California, might as well be the moon. I do get that, but I really like Burton as a player.
So it's funny, there's a team right in between both of these two schools. You've got Georgia, you've got LSU, and a lot of people think, oh, that's interesting, the teams that are playing in the SEC championship game. But when you look at LSU's class, they have 4 receivers committed right now. I'm counting Eric Gilbert as a receiver. Yeah. And a lot of those guys, actually 5 receivers committed, counting Gilbert as a receiver. A lot of those guys do the same things. They're all about 6 feet tall or 6'1". They're right around 185 to 200 pounds. They could be slots. They could be the Z-type receiver. They could be a guy that can fill a lot of roles in terms of going over the middle and making plays. Hard to check in space. So you wonder what's happening there with LSU's class. Remember, this was a class that at one time had 9 defensive line commitments. It had 1 offensive line commitment. I think the Tigers are going after a late offensive line target in this class to add some more, all-around versatility to their class. But also, they're in the Jordan Burke sweepstakes as well. So what happens if LSU gets in a situation where they either have the chance to keep Burton in the class or add a Birch to this class? I know that's something that a lot of our members in the Dog Nation forum have been wondering about. What if Jordan Birch's candidacy at LSU causes them to look at their roster and look at their commitment board and wonder where they might need to make room?
Okay, so that'll be worth following. By the way, Craig Stafford on YouTube a moment ago said with the changes at South Carolina, Brian McClendon out, Dan Werner out, offensive overhaul going on there, does that do anything to Marshawn Lloyd's status as a USC committed running back?
I think what's happened there with Georgia and Zacchaeus Walker making his decision and Noah Sewell making his decision, and now you see Corey Wren backing up off his commitment, I think it brings in the second running back discussion to the 2020 class a little bit. I know a lot of our members on the Dog Nation forum feel that that's vital to have 2 running backs in this class to make sure Georgia always has 5 scholarship backs ready to hold on to that true RBU title. Doesn't matter the flashes you've seen from Kenny McIntosh. Doesn't matter what Kendall Milton has already shown he can do as a high-stakes prospect out of California.
Yeah, I'll say it under no certain terms. I like all the players individually. It's just not enough. It's not enough running backs.
James Cook, you wonder about that guy. You wonder about all those guys.
I like them all. It's just not enough. You need another one.
Need another one. But then you start thinking, who are the most likely candidates? And for me, to answer that question, I don't think Marshawn Lloyd is high up on the list for Georgia at running back as another name that you might see on an extended top targets list, because we got a little bit more, Brandon.
Whoa! First time in a while for extended names.
No, Brandon, we didn't go to the Clark County phone book, as you like to say, because that's
first
sort of,
time in a while.
That sort of stuff, Brandon, gets you distracted. You start thinking, oh, these aren't the guys.
Come to me, a little extra names here. I like it.
We are having an expansion of our top targets list.
All right, let's see what we got here. Expanded to we're going to number 11. All right, so now I'm just completely confused. It's been top 10 forever. Now it's 11. So Marcus Fleming's still on. I'm not still on here. On here, he just took the official visit. We talked about receivers a little earlier. So Fleming on here at number 11. I have no idea. How many more of these names we got coming up here?
we got some more. We got some more on the back. Right. We got a tractor trailer worth of names.
So
right
y'all, my mind is completely blown. Was the John C. Riley gift thing of I'm completely mind blown now. All right, so Fleming, let's keep going here.
Fleming just took an official visit to Nebraska, by the way.
Oh, yeah, all down with that. Let's keep going, see how long we have to go to get to a running back. Name number 12. Ooh, Trevon Dexter's still on here. Let's party. This is fun. This is fun.
Dexter, obviously, still a big priority for Georgia's class. If you start asking folks if there's a chance there for Dexter and there's a chance there for Birch, are those the type of defensive linemen that could play right away at Georgia? Mm-hmm. I think Trevon Dexter's a guy that could do that.
Oh, I think Dexter's a very impressive prospect. It'd be good news. My only problem with Dexter is his social media behavior does not lead me to believe he's flipping from Florida.
Yeah, but sometimes social media behavior is what it is.
That's true.
Folks, now listen, these are guys that are at the back of this list for a reason. I've already tweeted all of this. I've already hyped it all. I don't want people to go out there and start making T-shirts and putting edits together or anything out on social media. But these are just guys. When you think about guys that Georgia could ultimately and ideally add to the class, where there's at least a glimmer there. I think that glimmer for 11, 12, 13 on this list is faint, but I think there's something there.
You can't see this because the lights wash it out. This says Trevon Dexter Flip Watch. Jeff Sintel has reported that. Put it on all the message boards. I'm kidding, of course. All right, let's keep going. This is fun. I got all kinds of flips going on. Other names to get to? Can we get to a running back here on name number 13? Tank Bigsby is back. Boy, this is like homecoming week on Before the Hedges. We're bringing back all kinds of names we haven't talked about in a while, and you know what? I'll take it. I like Bigsby.
So this is the ghosts of top targets past. If we want to continue a Dickens-esque metaphor for the top targets list, I can assure you that there will be no Eric Gilbert or Brian Brzee or Zach.
By the way, Chris Branham said that telling other people in the comment section, Jeff just confirmed that Dexter's a lock to flip to Georgia.
Yeah.
Chris Branham, you're doing the Lord's work, my friend. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So can we talk about Tank Bigsby?
Yeah, I want to.
You still got that eye candy over here.
No,
you're still fixated on Dexter.
Tank Bigsby's plenty eye candy. He's plenty eye candy enough. I'd be more than happy to do this. I think Georgia should have been talking about him the whole time.
I want to make sure you know this. I want to make sure all you good people out here know this, that for Callaway's playoff game last weekend, there was a visitor on the sideline. You know who that visitor was?
I'm hoping it's going to be someone wearing a very similar clothing item to what I'm wearing.
That would be Dale McGee.
That's what I like to hear. So
when you have, and folks, I think this is like glimmers of shot here. I think Tank Bigsby, especially with Auburn winning and Gus Malzahn continuing his legacy to get a statue built in front of Jordan-Hare Stadium. I think that there are glimmers there, but the fact that the running backs coach at the University of Georgia was checking out Tank Bigsby at his last playoff game, I think that's something there that if we had to get down to a 13th name on the top targets list just to do something different for this guy right here.
Not for me. Listen, I exist to serve the people. That's my job. I serve the people. They're the one who want to hear about running backs. I'm just trying to do what Craig Stafford and the rest of our commenters, they want to hear about running backs. Cartavius Tank Bigsby is certainly one of those.
Just got elevated. Another thing to report on Tank Bigsby is somehow in a weird way, And it's through the evaluations of rivals, through ESPN, through 24/7 Sports, some really good professionals that do great work evaluating these guys. Tank Bigsby just picked up his 5th star recently, Brandon. He is now a 5-star running back, the number 27 overall prospect.
Yeah.
Actually, in a weird
seems
twist
like the kind of guy you might want to maintain consistent communication with throughout the process if you're Georgia, but that's water under the bridge. Water under the bridge.
And
all is forgiven.
Ideally, or somewhat ironically, he's now higher rated than Kendall Milton is right now.
Listen, I think they're both good players. Milton spoke very highly of Bigsby back when you covered Milton's commitment. Just saying, maybe in the future, not slow playing a player of this caliber might be a good way for Georgia to go.
Well, we went through reels and reels of bandwidth on the internet about Zachary Evans, Tank Bigsby, Don Chaney Jr., Marshawn Lloyd. Do we have all of them all decked out in the running back room?
Yeah, listen, I'm not even saying that I know that Bigsby is better than Evans or better than Chaney or better than Lloyd or better than anybody. I don't know if any of these guys are going to be good, but I do know that Bigsby was good enough to deserve to be recruited the entire time. I do know that.
Well, he was being recruited. He just wasn't he wasn't considered as the guy.
But you know what? It's Christmas. It's SEC Championship. I got nothing but happy vibes going on, so that's all I'm going to say about that. Is that the last name? We got more. All right, that's done. All right, before the Hedges presented by Kroger. By the way, speaking of fun stuff, today and tomorrow, the legendary former Georgia coach and athletic director Hedges going to be making some appearances at Kroger's around the North Georgia area. And really, there's a lot of these coming up. If you go to dognation.com, you can see the full list. But let me show you today and tomorrow. It's the Kroger in Rome. That's today, 4 to 6 p.m. That's 1476 Turner McCall Boulevard in Rome. And then tomorrow in Marietta, let me give you the address here, 4880 Lower Roswell Road, Marietta. Let's be specific about that. So Rome today, Marietta tomorrow. Coach Dooley signing copies of his books, reminiscing, telling stories about great moments in Georgia past. So many of these he's had an influence on. Kroger's been doing this now for a long time. And this year, another great series of Coach Dooley book signings. So make sure you check that out at a Kroger near you and go to dognation.com to see the full list. If you're not close to Rome or Marietta, there is one close to you. So check out the full list there at dognation.com. We've got Six Pack coming up. Jeff Sintel will stump us, me mostly, with some trivia questions. Before that, though, Jeff, always fun to kind of check in on some of the online chatter, some of the things that have been said online. And I'll turn the floor over to you to do that right now.
All right, first up, we've got a lot of kind of a decent little volume of material to get through.
No good.
Gonna be running back heavy, I guess, with this one.
Well, that's all I want to look at this. That's all I want to hear.
So Kendall Milton, somehow, I guess the guy that does Buchanan Football Nation Daily might be lamenting the fact that in his last game as a high school player, he had 13 carries for 183 yards and 3 touchdowns. Everybody's gotten to know the Milton family. They've already kind of embraced them and welcomed them into Dog Nation.
I can only imagine how I've been on this end as a senior player myself, not football obviously, but other sports. I can only imagine the emotion that must be for parents watching their children do this. As I said, I've been on the other end of this, but to see, years from now as a parent doing this, I imagine that Chris Milton and the entire family, and we have so many players' families who kind of check in and watch our content. I imagine so many tears shed around this time of year. I don't care how excited you are about the college future, saying goodbye to those high school years. Man, there is something about that.
Yeah, and there's one little thing that I hated it to hear this and learn about this, but the Milton family, who I think have done a great job raising their boys. I think Kendall is an example of some of the best things in high school football. You see, we've reported him some weeks. He's talking to high school kids. He's visiting sick kids or burn victims in the hospital. Well, and first of all, I hope this was a mistake. I hope this was an error. But after their playoff game against Central, which Central won that game, Buchanan had a spirited effort. It was much closer than the regular season matchup. The side of the stands where the Buchanan fans were sitting as visitors, they were on the road. Those gates were locked at the end of the game. So what that means for anybody that's represented, it's kind of a rite of passage for high school players. When they play the last high school game, tears are shed. It's a tough moment. If you've never played the game, if you've never been a part of that, it is a true heart-wrenching moment for a lot of young men that who have grown so close and bled together and practiced together and seen everybody basically every day of every fall for the last 10 or 11 years of their lives. Well, that's a very emotional moment, and their parents were not allowed to get on the field and connect with them and kind of give them a hug or take a selfie or say, "You did good, son. I'm proud of you," or anything like that. The Buchanan parents were kind of robbed of that moment. Now, the opponent who won the game that's moving on, their parents were allowed to come down onto that field and mingle with their boys and celebrate a win. But that same opportunity wasn't afforded the visiting team. And having been around high school football a lot and covered a lot of these big-time playoff games, I don't know if I've ever seen that before, and that's disappointing.
Craig Stanfield, thanks for the kind words, says he enjoys the show. Really appreciate that. How about the next name or the next piece of online chatter to show us?
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. So this is Kendall Milton. That big game, his dad does a great job of documenting a lot of the best plays from the game. And look at this toss sweep. This was one of 13 carries. Kendall has 13 carries and ends up with 3 touchdowns. Let's rapid fire go through them right there. That's his first one. The second one is he's got a wild dog look right there. Can I go ahead and call it a wild dog there, Brandon? He gets the ball again, another basic toss sweep, but you just outman guys on that side.
What is Buchanan High School again? What's their nickname?
The Bears.
So he's a wild bear at that point.
Wild Bear's pretty good too.
Let me tell you something. Be careful with these wild bears.
Wild Bears, and again, you get man on man, a hat on a hat out there, and you get Kendall going to the right side.
He's had a great senior season. He really has.
Keeping going, I think we have one more Kendall highlight. He had 3 touchdowns in this game. I want to make sure you guys see them all. This one, I've seen this 19 times already from Kendall Milton this year. He just splits the
I love the cutback.
Splits the defense, and then there's nobody in front of him. There's nobody up top in the box, and I don't think anybody.
Is that a running back that can play as a freshman?
Yes, that's a running back that will play as a freshman.
Good to hear. Good to
I
hear.
think he's going to be a 1, 2, or 3 back option at the minimum there for Georgia next fall.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
You got the Kendall Milton mini-series there of highlights. You had 3 of those right there. And this is the one I absolutely love, Brandon. You want to talk about a dual-threat tailback? Here's a dual-threat tailback. So you see the pass, it's tipped at the line, the central player comes up with it.
Wow.
And then Kendall cleans him up on the sideline
My gosh.
there. So you want a physicality, which is a vogue term in Georgia's. Look at him taking care of his team, playing some defense. Is that a forearm shiver? That's one of the most impressive Kendall Milton highlights of this season.
That's pretty serious right there.
And Brandon, can I get a that's my running back right there?
That's my running back right there. I like that. I like that a lot. That is what you want to see.
So Kendall Milton, we've probably got a little bit of his senior year highlight tape just in that one game.
That's
Moving on, more online chatter. I know there's things that Brandon wants to see. Next up in our Rolodex of online chatter, we've got Eric Reed. So remember, we talked about him earlier in the show. This decision wasn't easy, but due to the coaching uncertainty at Ole Miss, I'm reopening my recruitment. I want to thank you for recruiting me. He's got his little signature down there on the bottom.
Nice. Always classy.
Eric Reed, now a safety name to watch for Georgia in the 2020 class.
So keep your eye on that.
Remember this, Georgia signed Lewis Seen last year as a safety. The only other 2 defensive backs they signed were Tyreek Stevenson, doing great things. I think he's going to do great things on Saturday. We'll have to do great things on Saturday. And then DJ Daniel. Those are the only 3 defensive backs in that class. So right now, when you add Jalen Kimber, you currently only have 4 defensive backs in 2 years. I think Georgia would like to add 2 or 3 more, and Eric Reed seems like a hot name for that going forward.
I think that's well said.
Chatter away? We have any more chatter in the chamber? Corey Savage. That would be Co-Savage, which is Corey Wren. I called him Corey Savage a lot. He's just going to reopen his recruitment and look into deeper programs. He wanted to thank Georgia, the coaching staff, and the fan base. And the fans really, really welcome Corey. It's one of the things that he was really fond of. He wanted to make sure the fans know that he really felt welcomed and loved by the Georgia fan base, at least
That's really nice. That's really nice. So that's all of our online chatter for today. All right, good stuff there. So Corey Wren on his way. We certainly wish him well as he finds a new program. Excited about who Georgia might bring in his stead. And obviously Eric Reed, one of those names to watch the class of 2020. And boy, can't wait to welcome him with open arms. Kendall Milton. Not going to be as many early enrollees for the 2020 class as there was for 2019, but one of those will be Milton, right? And that's a chance. Isn't that right?
Kendall will be one of those. Yeah. Justin Robinson will be one of those.
Point is, we get to see Milton in Athens sooner rather than later, which is exciting.
I think there'll be something interesting happening down the stretch there for Georgia with their early enrollees. I'm just going to watch and wait for that to happen. Something interesting is going to happen there with Georgia and its early enrollees for the 2020 class.
So keep your mind on that. We'll pay attention to that. It's Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. And, of course, one of the things we always like to do on our show, kind of step away from the world of recruiting for a moment. Jeff likes to stump us with some trivia questions. I would imagine it may be either LSU or SEC championship related here for this day, so settle in. Let's see how many of these we can get correct.
One quick thing, folks. I want to give you a program announcement. Brandon Adams is going to be live in the Dog Nation Forum at 5 p.m. tonight. We're going to be having a staff-wide chat. That means you got On the Beat, you got Good Day UGA, and then you got obviously Dog Nation Daily that are going to be there.
Obviously.
I'll probably be trying to chaperone a lot of these guys and let them kind of take up all the comment section they want. Get your questions in there. We've already opened up the thread on the Dog Nation Forum. If you're not a Dog Nation Forum member, you should definitely consider it. A lot of this stuff that shows up on Hedges every day is something I said 2 or 3 days ago in the Dog Nation Forum. A lot of those tidbits that we already profiled today during our weekly review show. And we're going to give a little Dog Nation swag to the best question in the thread today.
Am I eligible to win?
You're not eligible to win, sir. I think you got I think you own all the Dog Nation swag we possibly have. You got hover helmets coming out of your briefcase when you leave the show. You're throwing them out to passersby at MARTA. I mean, you're rolling in swag, sir.
Listen, that's what they pay me. They pay me in swag.
First up, online chatter. Which one of these things? These are going to be all about Georgia LSU.
All right, good to know.
Not true. This is a not true. Which one of these things is not true about Coach O? A, his parents have the nicknames Baba and Coco.
That certainly sounds like it could be true.
He signed to play with LSU and then transferred out.
Interesting.
Played with former Falcon Bobby Hebert in high school. And folks, we got Falcons now over here. He knows everybody that ever played for the Falcons by now.
Certainly seems like that could be true.
D, he names his practice days. Every practice day has a specific name, and today is No Repeat Wednesday.
I think that might actually be true.
And E, he has coached with luminaries such as Jimmy Johnson, Pete Carroll, Lane Kiffin, and Sean Payton. Of course, one of those names is not like the other, but at least all those are well-known coaches.
I believe that may be true as well. So I think you're left now with the Baba and Coco. That just seems like a very potentially Orgeron thing. So he either didn't play with Hebert. Hebert is obviously from Louisiana. Or, the honest truth is, I'm not really quite sure about Ed Orgeron's background as a player. So I'm going to assume that I'm going to say he didn't play in high school with Bobby Hebert.
Didn't play. What are your folks on the?
Because wouldn't Hebert be a little older than Orgeron? Am I wrong about that? Let me get a few of these. Drew Roman says B. Brett Brown says D is wrong. I mean, I know he talks about the Tell the Truth Monday, which a lot of coaches do. The No Repeat Wednesday seems like it could be true. You may be right, but that seems like it could be true. Nick on YouTube says B. So we got some various answers coming in. I'm going to go Hebert. I want to say that Hebert may be a tad bit older than Orgeron. Am I wrong about that?
You're wrong about that, sir. They did play together in high school.
Okay. All right.
So the correct answer is actually D, names practice day. Today is No Repeat Wednesday. D is not true. Wednesday is actually Turnover Wednesday, and tomorrow will be No Repeat Thursday for LSU.
Sometimes these questions take a tedious turn.
The whole purpose is to give you information.
Sometimes they take a tedious turn. All right, so I'll take the L on that one, begrudgingly take the L for that. And
you didn't like the pin placement today on that hole? Is that what you're talking about?
That's tough. But nonetheless. James Wade says Coach O is 58. Is Hebert not older than 58? Isn't Bobby Hebert a little older than that?
I think Bobby Hebert's right around that age.
Okay.
Remember, he was a Falcon quarterback.
Early 90s.
After Jeff George.
Yeah.
Number 2, Brandon's going to try to get off the schneid and go 1 for 2. Which one of these things is not true about the Georgia-LSU rivalry? A, LSU won the first 7 meetings.
Don't know if that's true or not.
B, the two teams have split the last 14 meetings.
Seems like that could be true.
The Tigers have won 2 of their 3 matchups in the SEC championship game. If you don't get this one right, Brandon.
03 and 2011. Georgia won in 2005.
These teams have faced off 31 times. 72% of those games have been decided by 14 points.
Exactly 14 points?
14 points or less.
14 points or less?
Yes. 14 points was the margin of the game.
Ooh, I don't know. That's a tough one. I actually don't know the answer to this. So I'm looking for one that's not true.
Ooh. Can we, I hate to interrupt this segment. Well, I'll let you guys gather in some information.
So
I've got something that is happening. Bruce Feldman reported, Brett McMurphy have reported. Colorado State and Mike Bobo have agreed to a mutual separation, opening up one of the more attractive jobs in the group of 5.
Can I be dumb for a second? I think this already happened. I think this happened like a week ago.
Nope.
So, yeah, I mean, that's obviously big news, but for some reason I thought this had already happened. So, yeah, all the big blue check brigades reporting this. Bobo
Blue check brigade, I like that.
He is out at Colorado State. Here's my take on Bobo, and I'll do this real quick. I think if you're Bobo, if you're healthy enough to be a head coach, I don't think you voluntarily demote yourself to offensive coordinator at a place like South Carolina or any other place that might potentially have an interest there. But do I think that Bobo, assuming he wants to be a head coach again, could be on the open market as an analyst maybe? I think that he might be. I think if you're a head coach, you're going to be really careful about taking an offensive coordinator job, because once you do that, you're now an offensive coordinator again. So if you have any thoughts of, Bobo's influence in the Georgia offense, I think it's got to be as an analyst. The truth is, they're probably going to be deservedly so patient with James Coley anyway. But I don't think that Bobo voluntarily demotes himself to an offensive coordinator for anybody unless he just has decided that being a head coach is not for him, either for health reasons or something else.
A lot of Georgia folks are gonna rally around that name. Could he come into the program potentially? Would there be a staff migration where somebody comes and takes a Georgia coach, and maybe this Georgia could find a way to get Mike Bobo? It's been well documented how well he knows Kirby Smart and how well respected of a voice for offensive football that Mike Bobo is nationally, especially in the Southeastern Conference. Is there an analyst position? You remember the Jay Johnson role at Colorado? Is there a potential fit there with Georgia?
I think analyst makes the most sense. Now, I think it'd be a real shame to see him become the play caller at a place like South Carolina, because he also would obviously, know Will Muschamp pretty well too. I think that'd be a real shame to see Bobo coaching somewhere else. My guess is he's no one's offensive coordinator in 2020, and if Georgia wants him, it needs to be as an analyst while he recharges the batters to become a head coach again, which a lot of guys have tried to do.
Or maybe a quarterback coach, something like that. What do you think about him as just simply a position coach?
I think once you voluntarily demote yourself, you're no longer in the pool of potential head coaches. And that may be what Bobo wants. He may be done with being a head coach for various number of reasons. But once you look at Steve Sarkisian, the perfect example of this. Sarkisian was head coach at USC. Now, he had very, very different issues than anything that Mike Bobo has dealt with. But once he made the decision to become an offensive coordinator again, that is all he has been since then at 2 different jobs, and that may be all he ever is again because of that. You got to be really, really careful about demoting yourself when you lose that job. The same thing is true for Chad Morris and any of these former offensive coordinators who have lost their jobs. I don't know they're going to be just running around, raising their hand for offensive coordinator positions unless nothing else becomes available. And they'll probably wait because all these guys are rich. They'll wait a couple of years to find that out.
Yeah, they're all rich. And I think, the one thing I think that no one knows the answer to is whether this Colorado State experience has shown him that maybe he does or does not want to be a head coach. Maybe he doesn't still want to be a head coach. Maybe he wants to be a play caller. Maybe he wants to try and win a national championship with one of the big boy programs in the SEC, which he is very familiar with. I think those are all things that must be sorted out with Mike Bobo's career going forward.
And I want to be clear about this. TM says on YouTube, he says, BA, I am shocked you're not pulling for this move, like shocked. Here's the thing you got to understand. If it's simply a matter of what I want Mike Bobo around the Georgia program, what I want him working for what might end up being a senior year of Jake Fromm, I would absolutely want that. I really like Bobo as a coach, even back in the kind of the controversial age of, fire Bobo and some of the stuff that existed back then. I was a big Bobo fan, would be a big fan of his right now. There's 2 separate issues here. I'm not necessarily looking to push James Coley out the door. I'm really not, because I think that Coley does a lot of things for Georgia, even if people haven't always been thrilled with him this year. This is more about what I think Bobo wants. I think it's just too easy to say round peg, round hole of Mike Bobo kind of comes in, swoops in, saves the Georgia offense. I'd love to think that might be true. I think there's a chance you might be able to get him as an analyst. I don't think Bobo wants to be somebody's offensive coordinator, but that's all just my guessing and speculation.
Yeah, and here's one thing. I mean, he's got a great reputation. He's done a lot of amazing things in college football, coached in a lot of big games, been a part of a lot of big games, and I think Bobo has the ability to kind of pick his spot here, and he's earned that. And obviously, the things that have happened with his health, and he's had the health scare. Most importantly is you want to see him make the best decision. He is a family man. I think his younger son is now an offensive line prospect who's already picked up an offer from Tennessee. Might be a time for Mike Bobo to maybe step back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. and it's a weird comparison, but Butch Jones has been working as an analyst at Alabama, but while doing so, there have been a couple of reportings of him getting a head coaching interview. Now, he hasn't gotten the job, but he's gotten those interviews. So I think you can still get a head coaching interview working as an analyst. I don't know that you can get a head coaching interview working as an offensive coordinator, which you would think once you've achieved that level, that's where you want to stay. So my dream scenario would be maybe the Georgia coaching staff remains intact for 2020, and a guy like Mike Bobo comes in as that analyst role, biding his time, recharging the batteries, influencing Jake Fromm, replacing kind of some of the stuff that I believe that Jay Johnson used to do for Georgia. I think that'd be incredibly valuable. All right, when we pop back into our trivia here.
Would he run the ball, though, wherever he goes? Would he run the ball?
You would hope so. You would hope so. So I don't have any idea. I'm going to say that the one that's wrong is I'm going to say that D's wrong. I'm going to just take a flyer on this.
Brandon, you are correct, sir.
Yeah.
So get this. The teams have faced off 31 times. 72% have not been decided by 14 points, but the number is actually high at 60%.
Okay, so close games over the course
60% of those games have been decided by 14 points or less.
Oh, that's good stuff. Good stuff.
Number 3, we had a mid six-pack. Somebody had to slow down on their six-pack a little bit. Brandon, you might know this if you've read your Dog Nation earlier this week. Mm-hmm. What is the current blue chip ratio? Not the blue chip attrition ratio, but the current blue chip ratio of football signees between Georgia and LSU dating back to 2016.
Okay.
75 to 54, 75 to 59, 75 to 64, 75 to 69.
Yeah, I mean, obviously LSU's done a good job. Georgia has been better. I'm tempted to say either 59 or 64. I'll say 64 for LSU. Do I want to say that? Last year that they out-recruited Georgia was 2016, I believe.
Number 2 in the country. Number 5 last year.
I'll go 75-64. I'll go C. TM says C as well. Tal Whitaker says, what is a blue chip? That's either a 4 or a 5-star signee. Either a 4 or 5-star signee to get the blue chip number.
Yeah,
Clay Dykes, Chuck Pearson actually says D. Clay and Jarvis say C. Lynn Johnson Shipman says B.
Tal Whitaker also, there's only about 400 of those, 380 or so of those every year. Those are the 4 and 5-star players. Those are seen as the best players in the country. And when there's only 120 programs in the NCAA Division I football bowl subdivision, and there are really only 380 that are seen as the best of the best, that goes to show you how well Georgia has been recruiting and LSU has been recruiting. Brandon, you were off of it by 5. The correct answer is 75 to 59.
Okay, so almost said B. That would have ended up being the right answer there.
And here's the thing. This is the highest one Georgia has faced all year.
Oh,
Most of the times Georgia has been 20, 24 named, 24 guys higher in the blue chip than all their opponents.
I still think the talent edge for Georgia matters in this game on Saturday, but it's not an overwhelming talent advantage like we're used to seeing Georgia have against teams such as Auburn and Florida. Not overwhelming in that regard. By the way, one more thing on Bobo real quick. I mean, one of the things I think would be cool about him if he could be an analyst, even if he's not an on-field coach, is that sort of true quarterback coach. You understand what I'm saying? That guy that knows the position, that tutors quarterbacks as opposed to just offensive mind, which is more of what I think of James Coley as being. I mean, I think of Bobo as more of a true quarterback coach, even if he can't be in an on-field coaching role. Boy, to have that institutional knowledge around the program would be incredibly valuable.
So here's what germinates in my mind right here. The potential of Mike Bobo in some capacity coaching Jake Fromm his senior year in Athens. Mm-hmm. Might that be the best synergy of player with experience, big game experience, knowledge of the game, and also position coach type, coaching staff environment? Now I know, everybody goes back to Bobo in 22 out of 25 against Wisconsin in the Outback Bowl, number 14, and
people forget he was a very good quarterback.
A very good quarterback. And the meeting of those two guys, I think, man, if that could ever happen, I think that would mean great things for Georgia.
Nah, listen, it'd be a great thing to think about just in any capacity, having not necessarily as a replacement for someone, but just as an addition to. Obviously, institutional knowledge like that's hard to come by. How about our next trivia question?
Yeah, moving on to our next trivia question, Brandon, we're going to go with a few of these. We're going to learn a little. We're going to teach. The purpose of these questions is always about teaching, letting people know something about LSU as they watch them play. An LSU alum did all of these things except for one of these. One of these is a gotcha.
Okay.
Which one of these is the gotcha? An LSU alum appeared on both of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette.
I have no idea.
That's one of Mrs. Adams' favorite shows, right?
Sure, yeah.
B, wrote the score. That's the musical score for the first 4 Rocky movies and The Karate Kid.
Okay.
Some great 80s movies, man. You have to say
absolutely.
that. C, development of the Hubble Space Telescope. D, was an early investor in the Red Bull brand energy drink. Or E, creator of the popular The Sims video game. You remember The Sims? You remember when it's popular?
I know what it is, yeah.
It's basically a game where you have pet humans and you teach them what to do.
Was Irwin Winkler the writer of the score for Rocky? I feel like that's a name. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I have no idea. Let me just see the choice again. I got to just guess one. Red Bull certainly seems like it could be true, given. Actually, I'm going to say Red Bull's the wrong one. I'm going to say D. Red Bull's the wrong one.
Should I have said early investor in the corn dog franchise?
That would also be a pretty good one there as well. Brett Brown says E. Jarvis Hanna says C. Lynn Johnson Shipman says C. I don't have a lot of knowledge on this to say one way or another. Anything for me is a total guess.
Brandon, your instincts serve you well. They were not an early investor in the Red Bull brand energy drink. Although Coach O has been known to drink a lot of Red Bull.
That's kind of why I sniffed this one out. It sort of felt like a Coach O homage, and so I was able to kind of pick that out.
Number 5. Brandon, this is Famous Folks. Part 1. We have 2 famous folks this week. This is the Dumbed Down Celebrity Edition. Which one of these celebrities is not connected to LSU or Baton Rouge?
Why are you going to put David Duke on there?
I would call them celebrities. I would call them something, but there are certain connections to the highest office here. A, David Duke. B, Stormy Daniels. C, Garth Brooks. D, Randy Jackson, the old American Idol judge. Or E, Woody Harrelson of Cheers.
Does Garth Brooks writing Calling Baton Rouge count as a connection?
That counts. That's a connection.
Okay. Randy Jackson, I could see him being kind of a Southern guy. Woody Harrelson, he was in what's the HBO show called?
True Detective.
True Detective. That took place season 1 in Louisiana. So does that count as a connection? Maybe it does. I reckon Randy Jackson is the one I'm gonna have to say. Randy Jackson, not for. Actually, wasn't Woody Harrelson from Indiana? So let me say Woody Harrelson's from Indiana.
Brandon, you almost threw the ball. You almost threw the ball in the briar patch there, but you checked down to your back at the last second.
Yeah.
Cheers to you if you got that one right, sir. Harrelson is the incorrect, dumbed down celebrity edition.
There you go. So I feel pretty good about that.
This last one, I had to do it. It involves my Apple Music account. It involves my playlist. Louisiana, specifically the Baton Rouge area, is actually known, and you're gonna be tedious about this one. It is one of the true cradle of hip hop artists and hip hop rappers.
Sure, I was just telling somebody that the other day. If I had a nickel for every time I've told somebody that.
Question number 6. This is the dumbed down celebrity rapper edition. Which one of these, and I think we're dumbed down hip hop edition, which one of these famous rappers is not connected to LSU or Baton Rouge?
All right.
A, you got Lil Wayne. B, you got Master P. C, NBA Youngboy. D, Little Boosie. Or E, Kevin Gates. There are a lot of big names here. This is like a literal all-star Rushmore.
All right, so let me ask you this. Believe it or not, I do happen to know that Master P is from New Orleans. Does that count as being connected here, or?
I'm going to just stick to the nature of the question. It's connected to LSU or Baton Rouge.
Then I'm going to say Master P because he's from New Orleans. I don't even know who these other ones are, but I know Master P is from New Orleans. Yeah, but like 3 of these could be fake. I wouldn't even know. But Master P is from New Orleans. Master P is from New Orleans. I know that. Who? I know what that is.
We got some NBA Youngboy. We got some Rex Wayne Suggs laying in on Lil Wayne. Tony Stone says C.
Master P is from New Orleans. If that doesn't count as Baton Rouge, he's from New Orleans. He's from New Orleans.
Incorrect. Sir.
He was representing New Orleans the whole time he was famous. It wasn't Baton Rouge, it was New Orleans.
New Orleans is not considered LSU or...
That's why I'm saying he's not the one that's connected because he's from New Orleans.
Correct answer actually is someone that's connected to New Orleans. That would be Lil Wayne, the Birdman, or a.k.a. Birdman Jr. Lil Wayne is connected to New Orleans. The rest of those are connected to Baton Rouge.
Somebody help me out with this. Master P is from New Orleans. That's all he ever talked about. All right. There you go. There you go. So pretty good. So Little Boozy, sorry to you.
NBA young boy.
NBA young.
Kevin Gates, I don't get tired.
I like these rappers now that use just like a regular name. I got respect for that. Kevin Gates. I got respect for that. Mr. Farrell says Master P grew up in New Orleans, but he's from Cali. See, Mr. Farrell knows. But
do you think you know your Percy Robert Miller? That's.
Yeah, he's a basketball player. Didn't his son go to USC and play basketball? See, I know more about Master P than you think I do. I know for sure. All right, we got to get ready to go. Let's do a couple comments on the way out the door. Can we see if we can get a couple recruiting things or whatever? Let's do like 1 or 2 minutes and we'll get ready to get off the air here. It always takes people a couple minutes to kind of get in here and do this. So, Jeff, give me a quick recruiting thought and we'll let some recruiting stuff kind of pop in here.
Quick recruiting thought. We covered a lot of these.
By the way, Tal Whitaker thinks I am right. Thank you, Tal.
Tal, thanks for asking your question. Sometimes we think folks don't understand what blue chip ratio means, so I'm glad that we didn't.
No, Tal Whitaker's talking about Master P being from New Orleans. He doesn't care about blue chip ratio.
Well, no, that's the one that we answered this question. We want to if we're ever covering things that folks, sometimes we think that it's germane to our audience, but if you ever want to know what the blue chip ratio, blue chip seems like, we're happy to do so. 2021 class.
James Crump, by the way, says rappers sometimes rep cities they may not be from, which is maybe true. Robbie McCullough says, does Georgia get Jordan Birch? Let's just cut to the quick. Does Georgia get Jordan Birch? Sorry, Robbie, the answer to that question appears to be no.
I was thinking about something, I'm going to say that 2021 class is about to get sped up really fast. We mentioned this going out the door on the Dog Nation Daily program on Tuesday, but I believe in a matter of weeks, especially during the early signing period, couple of weeks now, 4-star, near 5-star Camden County offensive lineman Micah Morris will make his college commitment. He was just at Auburn for the Iron Bowl, a very impactful day for a lot of folks.
Roe Hawkins asked about Zachary Evans, who did postpone his announcement. Any reason to pay attention to that?
That is not a shocker that he would postpone his announcement. I think one of our astute posters on the Dog Nation forum echoed what I was thinking. For this recruitment, when he's in the state playoff chase, the thought that he would make his decision in the middle of a playoff preparation week while you're trying to win a state championship, I don't think that was the best decision. So in actuality here, it seems like Zachary Evans, I feel in my mind's eye, he did the right thing by backing it up.
Rapid fire here real quick. Michael Kelly says, is it LSU where Zach Evans going to end up landing?
LSU, South Carolina, Georgia, those are the schools I feel like that are in it for the home stretch.
James Wade wants to know if 2021 quarterback Caleb Williams is going to end up at LSU after taking the visit this past weekend.
Another strong visit. I think 24/7 Sports did a good job of reporting the feelings. I think Steve Wilfong actually quoted his father as saying that visit checked every box. I thought it was interesting in some of that reporting that the father basically said there are some schools, considering the way other schools have set the bar so high, there are some schools that just can't simply keep pace with everything, the preparation, the total package of what a school like LSU, for instance, can offer. I would imagine that Caleb Williams is going to take a couple more visits. I don't think he'll make a rash decision coming off of his unofficial visit to LSU, but that'll be one to watch.
Last one, Shane Cothran said, "Who was your favorite recruit, Jeff, that got away from Georgia?"
This class or in general?
Let's just say in general.
That's a tough one. I know about like 19 names because a lot of these times I don't think about just the game and what they've done in college football at the college level. I think about just the type of young men they are, the type of families they are, the type of impact they make on college football. You know, he's not I wouldn't put him as my ultimate favorite, but Jacoby Stevens and his family was a really nice group of folks to get used to. Jacoby Stevens has a nice little storyline leading into the Georgia LSU game that we'll explore on the pages of dognation.com. There's a lot of them. I thought Jemias Williams was a guy that reminds me, just a good kid, good dude, heck of a football player, left it all out. Noah Sewell is going to be way up on that list for me as well. I mean, that guy is going to be on a Butkus Award watch list. I have no doubt about it.
By the way, last one, Jimbo Brown mentioned the idea of a Jake Bentley graduate transfer quarterback situation. I think it's probably too early to know who the name might be, but if Fromm leaves, you think Georgia, regardless of what C.J. Stroud does in the market for a graduate transfer quarterback for 2020?
I think they would look for an experienced quarterback because it just makes sense because let's face it, folks. We talk about additions to the team. This is all like, that will be a championship caliber team again next year. They'll have the ability to win the SEC East. They'll have the ability to get in this game again for the fourth time. With that defense, a lot of those players are going to be back. A lot of those players are going to be remarkably better in their second year. I think we've got to talk about recruiting. I think potentially the two biggest recruits for Georgia for 2020 are not any of those guys that's on a top target list, or it's not any of those guys that's on any board anywhere. I think Jake Fromm and Richard LeCount are two pieces of the puzzle. Should they come back, it will elevate Georgia's championship trajectory a lot.
Hey, this holiday season, a lot of you getting together with friends, neighbors, people at work. Kroger Party Platter is a great way to do that. They started just $19.99, whether it be a shrimp platter, a meat and cheese tray, a veggie tray. A great way to celebrate the holidays and gather close with the friends and family you care about at your local Kroger. Kroger, of course, fresh for everyone. We appreciate you being here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. I've got you back here later on this evening. Boy, it's going to be here before you know it for Road to Atlanta, starting at 6 p.m. As Jeff said, busy time in the Forum here this evening as well at forum.dognation.com. And we'll see you back here again next week at this same time for Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.